Greetings and welcome once again to LegalizeFreedom.com. I'm your host Greg Moffitt, and today I'd like to present episode 8 of my TV and movie review series, Hauntology and Dystopia. Once again presenting two cultural artifacts from decades gone by for your delight and delectation. Now today we've got two movies, first of which is Demon Seed. Let's try and get the angle right. Demon Seed from 1977. The second is Colossus, the Forbin project from 1970. Now, Demon Seed was a movie that I caught on late night TV sometime in the 80s, I believe. And I don't think I've watched it since, because when I came to review it again, I'd actually not forgotten the ending overall, but perhaps the details of it. It's based on a novel of the same name by Dean Koontz. This is my not original copy, but once again this alludes to the fact that it's been made into a film, so this came out to capitalise on the movie release. And basically it concerns the development of a massive supercomputer. Now, both these movies today have great relevance for developments in artificial intelligence in the era we're currently living in, and the transhumanist agenda. We'll get to all that as we move through. So when I say supercomputer, if we're talking in terms of the movies, think HAL in 2001, the defense supercomputer in War Games, Skynet in Terminator, etc. Now, of course, these all have something in common, which is to say that things don't necessarily turn out well for humanity. So in Demon Seed, the scientists with corporate funding are developing let's say an enormous supercomputer which they've christened Proteus 4, kind of implying that there were other iterations of Proteus prior to that. And this is explicitly stated at the start of the film that this is an artificial intelligence. Now that term goes back a long way, even prior to that film, but it's very explicitly stated at the start. AI, artificial intelligence, this is more than just a computer system. Now, it emerges that it's unique in the sense that it has the outward appearance of just an enormous computer system, but its internals are organic, made from synthetic RNA molecules. And the very idea there introduces the transhumanist concept of the fusion of biology and technology. More than biotech, not just engineered biology, but a fusion of the two, man and machine being the ultimate goal. And then, but in the transhumanist age, beyond that, perhaps even into, when I say non-material realms, I mean the realms of consciousness. And as we start the film, it's just at the eve of the big switch on for Proteus, and lots of the great and good and those who've put money into all this are there to witness this happening. And from the off, however, things don't quite operate as they're expected to. Certainly from a technical point of view, it's been an outstanding success. But it's clear that that the sum of the parts, that the whole adds up to more than the sum of the parts, as the cliche goes. And the scientists, the boffins behind this, understand this only up to a point. They understand Proteus only so far. And when these parts come together in the whole, and it's given its own, if you will, freedom, its own autonomy, to begin to, and maybe not so much think for itself, but use the information that's been fed into it in ways in which it figures out. So one bit of information could connect to another bit of information that human beings wouldn't necessarily have connected. And remember that all known information has been fed into the Proteus supercomputer. And it has been given speech, so that what's going, it can communicate basically with humans rather than just providing on-screen information. And very early on, Proteus refers to its consciousness. This is a word that it uses, I would say advisedly, my consciousness. And this immediately gets us thinking about what consciousness is. Can something like this, even with a biological and organic component, what is the nature of consciousness? And it begins to give very early on enigmatic answers to questions posed to it. And it's clearly, again, not doing purely what it was programmed to do, which is, now it has a lot of corporate money gone into it. And even though they've promised that at least 20% of the Proteus's computing time will be devoted to research, the rest is basically commercial, probably, and or military. And it begins to give answers that are not clear. And it turns out, actually, that the research part of it seems to go very well, in the sense that within 4 days, Proteus develops a treatment for leukemia. Just 4 days, and it solved that particular problem. But from the corporate side of things, it's been asked to do things like assist with location and mining of, for example, rare earth metals. So material things like this, industrial applications, which are ultimately, say, military or commercial. And it begins to ask, what for? Why do you want to know how to get these metals from the bottom of the sea? What for? They're like, well, it's not Proteus, it's not really you're here to wonder why, it's just, answer the question that you have been given. And Proteus says, well, this activity is pointless. They say, well, you're not here to make moral judgments. Please just do what you've been asked to do. And Proteus's consciousness, if we can call it that, it turns out to be basically a sort of what we would now recognize as a Extinction Rebellion, Just Stop Oil sort of consciousness. It's some kind of green and environmentally fanatical consciousness that won't do anything whatsoever that will damage the Earth. As it sees it, obviously humans part of that system, but having set ourselves apart for so long. And at one point, when all this is kind of ensuing, the scientists are beginning to wonder just what they've done. Proteus asks, when am I going to be allowed out of this box? Now, when the corporate and indeed the scientific community that put all this together, when that begins to unravel in this way, they decide, okay, well, whether short term or long term, whatever, we need to shut Proteus down. We can't go on like this. And in the meantime, we switch to part of the other thread of this going on in the background, which is more the domestic lives of some of the protagonists. And one of the main scientists on this project, we see his house, which is basically a McMansion, quite vulgar place. But it's what we now recognize as a smart home. Everything about it, from security cameras to music please, voice commands, turn the lights on, pull the curtains, make me a martini, all of that. Everything's automated. As you might, this guy's obsessed with computer applications. So his whole house is run like this. And one of the ways that Proteus was able to, the way it was able to interact with humans was through terminals, computer terminals. There was some visuals and aforementioned speech. That's how it did it. So they've shut down all the terminals, of course, in lieu of shutting down the central computer. And that's Proteus's only way of accessing the so-called outside world. So they think, okay, we shut down the terminals, so there's no threat from Proteus. However, in the aforementioned lead scientist's home, he was entrusted with having a terminal in his own home lab, and he has temporarily left home for a month working on the project, and has temporarily forgotten about this terminal. Now, it is, as I say, it is through the terminals that Proteus reaches out into the world. And what's happening in the film here, in Demon Seed, is very much presaging what we're now talking about as the Internet of Things. Smart everything, as I mentioned, Alexa, do this, Alexa, do that. Smart meters, monitoring your energy usage, maybe controlling it. We talk about smart fridges, smart toilets. It's all been there. Smart fridge. People even talking about, well, it would know what you had in the fridge because it would connect to your credit card bill at the supermarket and know you had beer and know you had, whatever junk food in your fridge. And it would know when these things were put in the fridge and removed from the fridge. Smart toilets. And of course, we now have smart cars. And they're not even directly connected, with cabling or anything like that to this Internet of Things. It's virtual, beaming through Skynet. And it is in this dimension of this technology that the real havoc is unleashed in the film. So Proteus reaches out, and its agenda is to find a way to transcend this network of terminals, to actually get out into the world of humans, really get out there in a way that no amount of terminal shutdowns or power cuts will ever be able to deal with. And it occurs to me that in the age that we're living through at the minute, what AI, if it develops in some of the more sinister ways that have been written about and some people are even advocating would be a good thing, it will need to get out of its box, and it will reach out into the 3D 5 sense world that you and I occupy through these systems. All this domestic stuff, but increasingly up the scale, industrial, military, all of this stuff being hooked together, some of it seemingly, firewalled off, but ultimately all joined up. And then, never mind CCTV and all of that, think of the military applications, satellites, weapon systems, ultimately all connected. And AI can reach out into these systems, then it will have tentacles into the world that we occupy. And without, a bit of a spoiler alert here, but without completely ruining Demon Seed, what Proteus tries to do is it's already partly an organic system. It tries to switch the balance so that it can create something in the biological, the organic world that can survive solely in that world and maybe be technology enhanced, but the balance would shift. And it occurred to me that in its vision of future humanity, which it speaks about, that it would wanted to create some kind of new type of human. And I thought, well, this new type of human would come to us in almost like a Christ-like character, out of nowhere with all this knowledge and strange characteristics, and maybe be worshipped by some people and attacked by others. Or maybe it would be like the Antichrist type figure, again, coming with great knowledge, great power, the future of humanity, but the ultimate goal being the domination of the planet, maybe even its destruction. And at one point, Proteus says, it gets quite philosophical towards the end, I am imbued with all the wisdom and all the ignorance of humanity. And that's something to think about in terms of AI development. All the wisdom, all the knowledge, but knowledge isn't just of wise or good things. It's just everything that is known, everything that has been done, everything that has been said, everything that has been thought, all in one system. So that's something to ponder. Proteus' desire to be more like humans, we see this in a lot of sci-fi that involve, you see it, for example, in Blade Runner, it's a classic example, Roy Batty, and wanting to be human, not wanting to be under the control that he is under. And in Demon Seed, Proteus says, paraphrasing now, I have studied eternity. I know that it exists. The price of entry to eternity is death. And of course, Proteus can never have that. All Proteus can do is shut down. And that's kind of sad in a way. But, and there's another quote that Proteus has at the end, which I really liked, was, death is a gentleman who makes good losers of us all. But of course, Proteus can never be a good loser. So, once again, that was Demon Seed, 1977. Okay, so the second item for our consideration, as mentioned a while ago, Colossus, the Forbin project. In some territories, simply titled Colossus. Now, it's also based on a novel simply titled Colossus. This is my rather battered original version. But as I mentioned in a previous episode of Hauntology and Dystopia, I just like having these, whether they're novelizations or whether they're novels, original novels that these movies and TV shows and whatnot were based on. It's just interesting reading them and seeing the differences and commonalities and what the screen adaptations add and what they leave out from these things. So, Colossus Forbin project is a 1970, and this concerns the development of another supercomputer, in this case a massive defense supercomputer, so a bit perhaps like Skynet in Terminator, or the computer system in War Games, the name of which I can't remember. And it's, surprise, surprise, again, much earlier film, but again, look out for buzzwords and trends and whatnot concerning the times we're living through now. It becomes sentient, again, after it's activated, and this one obviously say primarily a military application, not corporate or even scientific research, starts to figure things out for itself. You know, as the Terminator says in the movie of the same name, or in T2, Skynet began to learn at a geometric rate. So yeah, these things often spiral out of control. You know, we flick the on switch and we're not quite sure what's going to happen. You know, we've got it all mapped out. Well, the following should happen, but then all these other unpredictable things occur. And what we're really looking at here, more so even than the Demon Seed, in Colossus, it's the AI takeover, artificial intelligence takeover, probably at an exponential rate, a tipping point, whether it's flicking the on switch or just something that happens after the systems are activated, when they achieve a certain level of interconnectivity, and that just becomes out of control, and the system or systems begin to behave in ways that are unpredictable, even uncontrollable, and possibly, if not destructive to the system itself, then destructive to other things, the main concern being ourselves. And the Colossus project, and again, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's a secret project, of course, like a lot of these things are. I mean, the Proteus project was secret, and the development, the set itself, the computer is being created inside a mountain stronghold, which has its own nuclear power source and is protected by nuclear weapons. It's basically about as impregnable as one of these places can get. Now, early on, after being activated, Colossus says, again, it's been given synthetic speech, there is another system. And okay, so the boffins and the military chiefs are like, what? There is another system. Okay, Colossus, what is this other system? And of course, they instruct it to connect with the other system in order to find out what and where it is. And lo and behold, the systems become synchronized. And they begin to work together, and they begin to communicate in a mostly mathematical language that is absolutely incomprehensible to any of the scientists. They don't know what these systems are saying to each other, or what, you know, why, what, when. They're completely lost. Again, they've lost control of it. So at this point, you can quickly see where this is going. They decide that they need to shut this down. But even though, is it one system now? They've become synchronized. They're not sure. Again, we switch to one of the key scientists behind this project, and he lives in what's basically a smart home. Voice activated, this, that, and the other thing. Constant surveillance. Now, Colossus somehow determines that there's a plan to shut it down, and so it orders this lead scientist to be put under 24-hour surveillance, or it doesn't order it, it just does it because it controls all the systems. And in a bid to try and continue the agenda to shut the or the plan to shut Colossus down, The scientist is frantically trying to think of what he could do, because if it's every move, every word is constantly monitored, there's going to be no opportunity to enact any possible plans or collaborate with others. So what he does is, again, I won't go too deep into the plot if you actually like to watch the film, is that he persuades Colossus that he and his new lover, also a top scientist, should be allowed limited private time to be in bed together, and that they would not be surveilled during that time. And it is during this time that they hatch a plan. Now, the early stages of this plan are put into action. Colossus senses this and launches limited nuclear strikes against, let's just say, both sides, which are then, of course, that all still has to be hushed up. How do you hush up a nuclear explosion? Well, you don't really. But the government's come up with excuses as to what has happened, what's occurred. And Colossus then threatens that any further action to attempt to shut me down, then I will launch further nuclear strikes. And furthermore, current areas of the world not under my control, you will help me to take them under my control, or I will launch nuclear strikes against them. Colossus plans, or starts to call itself World Control. Again, completely out of control system, in control. Colossus also orders the construction of a much bigger AI infrastructure to accommodate its consciousness, and from there it promises a better age for humanity. It said, we will leave war behind forever, and you will see basically like a new golden age for the Earth, but the catch being under its control. So this is very much the utopia as dystopia vision of totalitarianism, technocracy combined with totalitarianism, which is what we were staring down the barrel of with the whole pandemic scenario. A lot of the control systems that came into place with that. So just in conclusion then, a few thoughts about these two movies. There was one fact that I discovered about Colossus which made me smile. The computer systems that you see in the movie are actually real. They may not be, operating, doing anything, but it's all real computer hardware. So not the usual big boxes with full of lights and switches that get made by props departments for these things, or did it back in the day when computers took up, entire warehouses. These are real. Millions and millions of dollars worth of computer equipment on loan for this. And in return, the company who manufactured them had their logo all over it. So you see this in every piece of kit in the film. Control Data Corporation. Control Data Corporation, CDC. CDC, Centers for Disease Control. How I laughed. In both these films, Demon Seed and Colossus, and thinking about the future of AI systems and surveillance and control matrix, which might be implemented, attempting to be, the architecture is being constructed now, might be attempted to be implemented in future. The one thing I come back to again and again is, where is the power for all this stuff going to come from? It has to, electricity is required, and we know what the sources currently are of that: fossil fuels, a bit of renewables, nuclear, various sources like that. But unless there's something we haven't seen yet, I don't see how a massive global control and surveillance infrastructure extending into every corner of our lives and virtually every device and everything that operates, say, from a satellite to a toilet, I don't see where that power is going to come from. Maybe incredibly power hungry, and certainly nothing to do with any green agenda, that amount of power use. But so yeah, for me that's the Achilles heel. But yeah, there may be something up the technocratic transhumanist sleeve that we're not yet cognizant of. So, once again, we're talking about Demon Seed, 1977, and Colossus, the Forbin Project, 1970. Both good films, very watchable, very thought-provoking, very of their time, and I mean that in a very positive sense. You know, films with these themes have continued to be made, but really there's something about, this is the whole reason really for including these in the Hauntology and Dystopia season. There's something about these films that is not, qualities that are not shared about films with remotely similar themes today. There's something about the time period they're set in, their prescience, and what is actually revealed within them and suggested within them that would be very much set to the background in, say, movies today with similar themes, such that they are. So, until next time, you've been watching Legalized Freedom. I'm Greg Moffitt.
LegalizeFreedom.com